Today I want to share with you the top 10 superfoods to stock in your prepper pantry, and they're all easy to find at your local grocery store. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning how to be a modern pioneer in the kitchen, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Now the first thing I want to mention, if at any time you want to jump ahead, be sure to open the description underneath this video where I'll list timestamps for everything I'm going to cover. And the reason I like to include timestamps, especially in videos like this, is because whenever I talk about the prepper pantry, I often like to take a few minutes in the beginning to talk to the beginner who may be new to this concept of stocking a prepper pantry. So if in fact you are new to the term prepper pantry, what we're talking about is that when we use the term pantry, just the general term pantry, we're referring to something known as the Four Corners Pantry. And the Four Corners Pantry, as the name implies, has four corners or four areas where we store food. The first corner is the working pantry, and that's usually a closet or a cabinet in our kitchen that we access on a daily basis, and it contains non-perishable foods. The second corner is our refrigerator, and the third corner is our freezer. And the fourth corner is our extended pantry, or what we nickname our prepper pantry. And why do we want to have a prepper pantry? The reason is that's where we store our non-perishable goods that allows us to restock our working pantry. And why do we want to be able to have those goods to restock our pantry, our working pantry? Is because there may be times when we're not able to get to a grocery store for various reasons to stock our working pantry when it runs low on food. We might be ill, we might be out of a job and don't have the money to shop. We may be going through all the various problems we've gone through over the last few years, and we may have supply chain problems where the food isn't getting to the grocery store, so even if we have the money to buy it, it's not available for purchase, and various reasons like that. Even bad weather that can keep us away from going to the grocery store. But if we have our extended pantry, our prepper pantry, and the food in our working pantry runs low, we have that handy and we can easily refill our working pantry. And how much food you want to stock in your extended pantry is completely up to you. And I have a huge playlist on how to start your prepper pantry, how to stock it with real food, nothing fancy, and how to do that on $5 a week extra added to your grocery budget. Plus, that playlist also includes how to store your food properly to preserve and extend its life as long as possible. Plus, if you're new to the whole concept of a Four Corners pantry and you're trying to transition from a processed foods kitchen where you buy a lot of prepared foods and move to a traditional foods kitchen where you learn to make more things homemade, I've got you covered with a 36-page pantry list, and it's completely free. And be sure to open the description underneath this video where you see a link that'll take you over to that pantry list that you can print out. And it will have everything that you need that you may want to consider buying over time to stock your traditional foods pantry. Plus, it also includes lots of links to recipes to show you how to use those foods to make nutritious and delicious meals. Now, let's talk about the top 10 superfoods we should all be stocking in our prepper pantry. Plus, I've got a few bonus tips for you at the end. The first superfood, or I should say foods, that we should keep in our prepper pantry are flax seeds and chia seeds. Both of these seeds are high in protein, and they also contain calcium, iron, and potassium. And potassium is something that's often lacking in our diet. It's a mineral, and it complements sodium. Now, we always have a lot of sodium, but we often need more potassium. If you have one of those little spice grinders, flax seeds are wonderful for grinding up and mixing into different baked goods, as well as just simply sprinkled on top of any type of cereal that you enjoy. Chia seeds are great for adding to cereal, especially if you do like an overnight oats and they get soaked, because they become very gelatinous. And so it makes a very nice creamy texture to whatever you soak them with overnight. Also, if you prefer not to use store-bought pectin, or you don't want to make jam in the very slow, old-fashioned way without store-bought pectin, and you just want something quick, you can grind these in one of those little spice grinders, and you can use that powder along with some cooked fruit to create something that's gelatinous and somewhat similar to a jam or a jelly. And just one more thing before we move on to superfood number 2, I want to stress that what I have here are the seeds, and this is especially important when it comes to flax seeds. You don't want to buy the flaxseed meal, because if you buy the meal where they've already been ground up for you, you'll want to refrigerate that or put that in your freezer, because that exposes the good fats that are in flax seeds, like omega-3s, similar to salmon and foods like that. It exposes the omega-3s to the air, and they're more inclined to go rancid than if you have the whole seed that you're keeping at room temperature. So be sure to look for the seeds, not anything that's been pre-ground for you. And then if you need to grind it, a little spice grinder and you're all set. Next, I've got superfood or foods number 2. Here I've got ghee, which is a clarified butter that's had the milk solids removed, and here I've got coconut oil. Both of these are shelf-stable, and both of these are very nutritious. If you're a fan of Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon, you know that saturated fats in our diet are very important. They're exceptionally important for nourishing our brain. And 2 that are wonderful to keep in our pantry, where we don't need to worry about them expiring, is ghee and coconut oil. Now, some people say that ghee is a forever food, because once you have the milk solids removed and it's not been opened, it should last indefinitely. I don't know that to be certain 100%, but I do think that it is a wonderful fat to keep in your prepper pantry, and I have kept it in my prepper pantry for years unopened, and when I've gone to open it, it smells as fresh as any other ghee. Once I do open it, I keep it in my working pantry, and I generally tend to use it up within a year. But I know many of you have shared with me that you've kept it open and at room temperature in your working pantry for more than a year, and you've found it to be just fine. So it's really just a matter of experimentation. The same is true of coconut oil. I will keep this in my prepper pantry unopened for a long time, and then I'll keep this in my working pantry open and use it probably within the year. Now, I will confess, I have often kept coconut oil in my working pantry well past the 1-year mark once it's been opened, and I find very little change. So this may be something that can stay very shelf-stable even after opened for a long time. And the nice thing about cooking with ghee and cooking with coconut oil is they both have a very high smoke point. And what that means is that you can heat them to a high temperature, both of these I believe over 400 degrees Fahrenheit, without damaging them. Because the last thing we want to do is eat any fat that's a damaged fat, because that will only cause inflammation in our body. And inflammation is a bad thing. Now, can you make your own ghee? Definitely. And my friend Jackie over at Little Country Cabin has a wonderful video where she shows you how to make ghee. And if you happen to live on a homestead and have a cow, she goes through a process where she actually shows you how to milk the cow, separate the cream from the milk, turn the cream into butter, and then take that butter and turn it into ghee. It's a wonderful video, and I'll be sure to share that with you. Superfood number 3 is cacao powder. This is made from the cacao bean, and this is what we know is used to make chocolate. Now, why you want to look for cacao powder over cocoa powder, and my local grocery store sells both, but they're in smaller containers. I believe I got this at one of the big box stores like Costco or Sam's, but you can also find this in small containers at most local grocery stores. And the reason why we want cacao powder over cocoa powder is that this is not alkalinized. So it's not alkalized and it's not Dutch processed. You will often see cocoa powder and it'll say Dutch processed, implying that's a good thing. And the same with alkalized. That can make that whole process of either Dutch processed or alkalized can make cacao powder into cocoa powder and make it easier to mix in baked goods and so on and so forth. However, it does affect the nutritional profile of the original cacao powder. So better to stick with this than cocoa powder. And why do we want this? Well, because it's very rich in nutrients, and it's especially high in magnesium. And research scientists have found that the magnesium in cacao powder is very good for keeping our hearts healthy. This also contains iron and potassium, which again, as I mentioned earlier, is something that sometimes we fall short of in our diets. So as I said, it's iron, potassium, and it also contains copper. And copper can sometimes be a difficult nutrient to find in, at least here in the United States, in the standard American diet. And copper is something that we really need to keep our hair growing nicely. Superfood number 4, vitamin C. Now, you may not have a domestic source for vitamin C or ascorbic acid, so what I recommend is having products in your prepper pantry that contain vitamin C, that are very rich in vitamin C. Now, there are various sources of things that are high in vitamin C, and one of those is rose hips. And this is also mixed with hibiscus, which is also rich in vitamin C. This is a tea. They're just individual tea bags, and I love this. It's very flavorful. And I like to keep this on hand as a good source of vitamin C. Also, I keep this amla. These are capsules, and it's a fruit called amla. It's sort of like I believe it's like a gooseberry or a sour gooseberry, something along those lines. And I can find this in the vitamin section at my local grocery store. But don't worry if you can't find this. Just look for things like rose hips and hibiscus, either in a tea form or a capsule form, and that's a wonderful thing to keep on hand to have vitamin C in your prepper pantry. And why do we want to keep vitamin C on hand? Well, certainly when it's available to us, we can eat various citrus fruits like oranges and grapefruits. But if you find that you're fighting a cold or maybe the flu, you may find taking some sort of vitamin C supplement to help you feel better and potentially lessen your symptoms. Superfood number 5, digestive enzymes. There's nothing worse than having indigestion or reflux and not being able to calm it down. But if you keep digestive enzymes in your prepper pantry, you'll always be prepared. Now, not just for when you have indigestion or reflux, as you get older, it can become more difficult for all of us to not only digest our food, but to absorb the nutrients from our food. And that's where digestive enzymes can help. Digestive enzymes will help you, as the name implies, digest your food. And if you can successfully digest your food, you can then extract the nutrients from it that you need for good health. Now, when it comes to digestive enzymes, you have a lot of choices available to you. You can get a tea like this that's called Ginger Aid. Ginger is wonderful for helping you digest your food. Fennel is also great at helping you digest your food. And one that I really like, I don't have the box, but I've got the tea bag here, is this lemon ginger. And it's organic, and it's an herb tea, just like these two are. And it's made by the Bigelow Company. And I've seen this pretty much at every single grocery store I've shopped at. And this is just delightful in terms of the flavor. It's one of my favorites, and I really enjoy taking a cup of this after dinner. Now, these are super papaya enzymes and plus. I think the plus is they add a little chlorophyll to help with your breath in the event that you're having trouble maybe digesting like onions and garlic and foods that are very heavily spiced and might give you a very strong breath. But these are very wonderful because papaya is a natural digestive, or digestive, as my mother would say. And you can just chew a couple of these, and if you're having indigestion or reflux, or possibly just a lot of burping with the food kind of coming up and you're not feeling completely comfortable, chewing on 3 of these can help you really alleviate the problem. And what's nice is, in the case of all of these digestive enzymes, is that they're really digestive enzymes. They're helping you to digest your food and then to absorb the nutrients. This is different and better for you than using some of the over-counter antacids, which actually kind of can slow down the whole process. They can coat your stomach and make you feel better, and I completely understand that in an emergency, but they're not something that you want to take on a general basis because they do interfere with the absorption of nutrients. Some other digestive aids that are quite wonderful is this Urban Moonshine brand, which I think is a very cute name, Urban Moonshine. But this is an herbal digestive bitters. And this is wonderful, and I've noticed it's becoming more and more popular. And you can just take a 1/4 teaspoon of this even before you eat to really get your digestive juices sort of waking up and getting ready to digest your meal. So this helps you tremendously on the front end to prime your stomach and prime your digestive juices to get ready to receive your meal and digest it accordingly. And as I said, you just have to take a 1/4 teaspoon. You really don't need much, and you're going to be glad that you don't need much because similar to this is also a version of a digestive bitter. These are very strong tasting, so you're going to be happy that you only have to take a 1/4 teaspoon. However, if you do find even a 1/4 teaspoon rather strong, you can dilute it with a little water, but just a little bit of water, because you don't want to take a lot of water before you eat, because then you're diluting all of your digestive enzymes, and that's just going to make it more difficult for you to digest your food. And these are what are known as bitters tablets. And basically what they've done is taken a digestive bitter, but made it into a tablet form that you let dissolve on your tongue. And you can take these before or after eating. Before eating, they serve in the way that these bitters do to help those digestive juices be primed and ready to receive your meal. Or if you find after your meal that you haven't taken anything like this, and you find after your meal you're having some trouble digesting your food, you can let 2 of these dissolve on your tongue, and that should help you digest. And these were actually something new to me that I recently discovered, and I really like these. And something that I thought was very clever about this, it says, supports healthy digestion. Well, of course, we know that's going to be the case because they are digestive bitters. But it also helps balance appetite and reduce cravings. So I said, well, I want to try this out and see, is this going to really reduce cravings? And I found that I was feeling a little hungry for something. I forget what exactly it was, but probably maybe a little sweet treat. And I put 2 of these on my tongue and let them dissolve. And I found I completely forgot about whatever sweet treat I had been thinking about enjoying. And so I said, maybe these really do work based on what they're made of. And they do have things like cinnamon and ginger. There's a whole host of wonderful herbs in here. So I think that it can do double duty in helping you digest your food, but also maybe doing something that calls a craving. So I definitely think these are worth giving a try if you find sometimes that you want to squelch a craving. Superfood number 6, fiber. Now, in the same way, from time to time we may need digestive aids. From time to time we may need a little extra fiber in our diet. Now, a wonderful source of fiber to keep in your prepper pantry that's very shelf stable is psyllium. Now, you can get this in capsule forms like what I've got here, and this again just was in the vitamin aisle at my local grocery store, and it'll be near various products that often help with settling digestive issues such as the laxatives. And you can also buy this in a straight powder form, and that can be mixed with water. Some, when they're mixed with water, are a little thicker, and then there are other varieties when mixed with water are very thin and you don't even know they're there. But regardless of which type you buy, Psyllium is wonderful to keep in your prepper pantry for those times when you need a little extra fiber. Or other options are simply having a selection of dried fruits on hand. And the good thing about dried fruits is not only do they provide fiber in your diet, they also provide a lot of nutrition. They're all filled with vitamins and minerals. And many of them are loaded with potassium because, again, we always need to make sure we're getting enough potassium in our diet to balance out all the sodium that we get. Many dried fruits are also high in magnesium, and like we learned with the cacao powder, magnesium is very good for our heart. It relaxes everything. It relaxes our blood vessels, and in relaxing us, it can also help us sleep. And the selection I have here are currants, very similar to raisins, and I've got some raisins over here as well. I've got figs, which are very delicious. If you've never had them, I highly recommend dried figs. I've also got the medjool, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, medjool dates, which are the most nutritious of the dates in the date family. And then over here, I've got some prunes. So any of these would be wonderful to keep as a superfood in your prepper pantry. Superfood number 7, raw apple cider vinegar. Now, though I love making my own raw apple cider vinegar, to which I have a 3-part series that I'll be sure to link to in the iCards and in the description below. So if you'd like to try your hand at making your own, it's very easy to do, and I love having that on hand. However, I always like to have something to back me up in the event that I run out of my homemade apple cider vinegar. Now, the good thing about apple cider vinegar is that it's very rich in probiotics, but you have to make sure that when you buy it, you buy one that says raw, with the mother. That is basically the probiotics, the good bacteria. And making sure that we have sufficient good bacteria in our diet, and this can be used in so many different ways, including the obvious, using it as a salad dressing, but you can use it as a marinade, you can use it to sprinkle over some strawberries in the event that you don't have or don't want to use because it can be very expensive, balsamic vinegar. The apple cider vinegar brings a lovely touch to it. And the importance of the raw, and it's saying that it has that it's raw and has the mother, meaning that it has those good probiotics that are wonderful for our digestive system. And the healthier we can keep our digestive system with those probiotics, with that good bacteria, scientists tell us the healthier we are. So, superfood number 7, raw apple cider vinegar, whether you make it yourself or buy some or both, like I like to do. And this is basically a forever food. This can be in your prepper pantry forever. And when it comes to apple cider vinegar, I just want to mention a book that I absolutely love having on my shelf, and that's this apple cider vinegar handbook. This goes through so many ways that you can use raw apple cider vinegar, and not just to ingest, but also different ways to use it around the house, as well as on your skin, and so on and so forth. But it's got some wonderful recipes in here, and it also has, this is, I find very interesting, it even has how to use this to make a linen spray. If you like spraying your clothes or something, that I find very curious. I've not tried that yet. But what I like is that there are a number of medicinal, various types of medicinal mixes that you can make that are somewhat like teas, where you're using your raw apple cider vinegar, but you're not necessarily heating it because you don't want to hurt the probiotics. However, they're drinks that can be served at room temperature. They can be mixed with other things to make soothing syrups. There's just a lot that you can do with this, both for medicinal purposes as well as culinary purposes. So definitely having apple cider vinegar in your repertoire, you will never go wrong. And I want to mention, whenever I talk about books, I highly recommend that you try to see if your library carries these, so that you can look through them and you can check them out, take them home, try some of the things that are recommended in the book, and then decide if it's a book that you want to purchase to add to your kitchen home remedy library or culinary library. So definitely look into this book. It's very common, and look and see if your library carries it. And then if you decide that you want to buy it, definitely check out used bookstores. You know I'm big on half-price books and any other used bookstores in your area, and you may find it there. And I'll definitely put a link in the description underneath this video to this book so that you have all the information you need. But it's basically just called Apple Cider Vinegar Handbook, and it's by Amy Lee, I think McCree, I think that's how she might pronounce her name. And this is actually a series of books. And this one, it has recipes for natural living, and then it's the Apple Cider Handbook, Apple Cider Vinegar Handbook. But there are a whole series of books in this Recipes for Natural Living series, and I highly recommend them. They're wonderful. Superfood number 8, mushrooms, specifically for the prepper pantry, dried mushrooms. Now you can certainly store canned mushrooms in your prepper pantry, but often canned mushrooms will just have one variety of mushrooms. The nice thing about finding dried mushrooms is that it's often a wonderful mixture of mushrooms, and every mushroom brings a little something different in nutrition to the table. Now, I often like to buy mushrooms and then dry them myself in my dehydrator. But recently, a wonderful viewer here shared with me that the big box store, Costco, sold dried mushrooms. And I thought, oh my goodness, what a time saver. And I was thrilled to find that they're a wonderful mixture of mushrooms, because that's my favorite thing to do, to have a mixture of dried mushrooms. And mushrooms provide such a wonderful source of nutrition. And I want to mention that if you're new here, I have a website, and I'll be sure to link to this in the description underneath this video. But on my website, I always do a blog post that goes into more detail about these foods than I cover in my video. So if you're interested in hearing more about the scientific evidence surrounding these superfoods, you will definitely enjoy that article or that blog post. Mushrooms are very high in vitamin D, and vitamin D is often lacking in many people's diets. And why does that matter? It matters because scientists have studied mushrooms extensively, and they have found that mushrooms, all mushrooms, regardless of the variety, seem to keep people protected from developing cancer. Now, some mushrooms are better at this than others, but the bottom line is all mushrooms have pretty much been found to protect us from getting cancer. Mushrooms have also been found to boost our immune system and to also improve brain health. So this is truly a superfood. Superfood number 9, raw honey. Now, I found both of these at my grocery store. This is definitely the more common one. This is just a typical honey. However, it's not been pasteurized. It's just been kept raw. And the reason you want raw honey is because honey is loaded with nutrients. It has all sorts of properties that help our bodies. It's got antibacterial properties, antiviral properties, antimicrobial properties. And if you're in a situation where you've not stocked your prepper pantry with digestive aids, but you go ahead and take a teaspoon of honey, it can often help to quelch any indigestion you're having. It's also wonderful, if you've ever had a sore throat, to take a bit of this dissolved in a tea that's not too hot, because you don't want to heat honey to the point where you're hurting the various properties in it that are so healthful to you. But if you dissolve a little bit of honey in warm tea, that can be very soothing. But often just taking a teaspoon of it and letting it sort of dissolve in your mouth a little and then swallowing it will do wonders at calming your sore throat. Also, raw honey, especially if you can find honey in your area that contains all of the nutrients that the bees naturally put into honey, can help you combat allergies in your area. And I'm talking about the sort of hay fever, airborne type allergies. It's often believed that the pollen that'll be naturally occurring in raw honey can help you build up immunity, much like the way homeopathy works. It can build up in your body a resistance to the pollen in the air in your area, because you're ingesting a little bit of pollen every day. If you take, say, a teaspoon every day, that it will help build up your resistance to the pollen in your air. So it's definitely worth trying. Now, a word of caution: you never want to give honey to a child 1 year of age or younger. And when you decide to introduce honey into your child's diet, always check with your pediatrician first, because every child is different. And you want to check with your pediatrician first to see if they advise you allowing your child to have honey. And when I talk about superfoods in general, I want you to know that I'm often referring to studies that have been done by scientists. I myself am not a medical professional. I'm not a scientist. I have nothing to do at all with the medical profession. I'm a homemaker and a home cook, but I really enjoy learning about these things and taking advantage of the wonderful properties that superfoods can offer us. What I have here is called Manuka honey, and this is a very special type of honey. Now, my grocery store does carry this, but I will warn you in advance that it is expensive. This small little jar, I believe, was priced somewhere around $20, maybe even a little higher than that. And it was often out of stock over the last couple of years, because I think the minute it came in stock, people were buying it to help them potentially fight viruses. It's very medicinal in many ways and very strong. It's been studied extensively by scientists, and it has all different properties in it, unlike other honeys that have in fact been found to be very strong antiviral and antibacterial. So I like to keep a jar of this on hand, but I have reserved this for if we feel we're coming down with something or if we are already sick. And that's it. I do not use this in any other capacity. So this stays in my prepper pantry or my working pantry, wherever I want to keep it, so that it's handy and ready in the event that we do feel that we're getting sick or are sick. So that's how I use this, because this is costly, and you really don't want to do anything in terms of cooking with this and potentially hurting the various properties that it does have. But I do think that if your local grocery store has this and your budget allows, this is something that's very good to keep on hand. But even any raw honey like this that you can find at your grocery store, even if you find one that's filtered and more liquid in nature, because that can be very handy for making different herbal syrups and herbal cough preparations when the honey is more liquefied like that. But regardless of what you find, keeping one jar or container of raw honey on hand will come in very handy. And I just want to mention one more thing. If you've got your apple cider vinegar and you've got some raw honey, mix those together, and they also make a wonderful soothing tonic, so to speak, for your throat, as well as introducing wonderful good bacteria to your gut, which often the flora in our gut, in our digestive systems, can really go off kilter when we're sick. So introducing the soothing honey that's now been mixed with the apple cider vinegar and is a little easier to take when it's mixed with honey will be introducing all of that good bacteria into your digestive system and hopefully help you heal and put you on the road to recovery in no time. Superfood number 10, spices, herbs, and flavorings, a wide variety of them. These are all wonderful for your prepper pantry, and they all have very nutritious properties to them, even in their dried or powdered forms. They bring so many properties to the table, so to speak, both for culinary purposes and medicinal purposes. What I've got here is some turmeric, and over here I've got some black pepper, and these are the black peppercorns. And it's best, if you can, to store the peppercorns and then just use a peppercorn grinder, because this will keep them the freshest the longest. And the reason I talk about turmeric and black pepper together is that they are complementary and they help bring out the best in each of them when we're absorbing them in our body for the reasons that we want to take them. Turmeric is considered a wonderful anti-inflammatory. So if you have aches and pains and things like that, turmeric is wonderful to use in your diet. And it's always best if you can cook it and then cook it with pepper, because it's most easily absorbed by us when it is cooked and cooked in a fat. So you could take some of your ghee or some of your coconut oil or olive oil or butter, whatever you may have, and cook up something delicious, and it'll also be very nutritious and very healing. Now over here I have oregano. I've got thyme, just the regular thyme. I've also got lemon thyme. This is grown in my garden. I've got over here ginger, and I've got what's over here, basil, and I've got garlic powder, onion powder, and cinnamon. And when you look for cinnamon, you want to look for Ceylon cinnamon, because that is the cinnamon that is the most beneficial for our bodies. It can be very helpful in controlling blood sugar. These are different scientific studies that I've read and that I'll be happy to link to in my blog post so that you can learn more about the benefits of cinnamon for our health. And ginger, wonderful digestive aid, as we talked about with the ginger tea. And basically things like thyme are wonderful culinary herbs, but also if you mix thyme with honey and let it steep for a while, it makes a wonderful cough medicine. And thyme mixed with honey can also be very soothing for a sore throat. And what I've got over here is vanilla extract, and this is just a homemade vanilla extract, which I then will decant into a little bottle like this that I use on a regular basis. And if you want to learn how to make your own extract along with 9 other extracts for a total of 10, I have a video all about that, and I'll be sure to share that with you. And the reason for keeping vanilla extract on hand, not just because it makes baked goods taste wonderful, it's also very good for our thyroid, for nourishing our thyroid. And keeping our thyroid healthy is very important. And speaking of the thyroid, these are organic kelp granules. And this is sold sort of in the spice area or near the salts in my grocery store. And this is a rich source of iodine, which is also very good for the thyroid, especially if you tend to use sea salt that may not be fortified with iodine like the more processed salts, but you really kind of want to get away from the processed salts that it contain chemicals and anti-caking agents and things like that. But you're worried about making sure that you have enough iodine in your diet. Adding a little bit of this to your seasoning can be wonderful. And I have a great recipe for making a sort of like what you would call a house seasoning mix, where I use some of those kelp flakes. So you'd never know that they're in there. They just give kind of a little bit of a salty flavor. And it's loaded with a lot of other herbs and spices that make it both culinary but also very healthful. Now, 2 books I recommend, and I've recommended this one to you many times, and I know there are so many folks out there who love this book and love Rosemary Gladstar, who is the author of this one. And it's called Rosemary Gladstar's Medicinal Herbs, A Beginner's Guide. And this will really help you understand, in terms of the herbs, all the various health benefits that they can bring to your diet as well as home remedies. And what's so nice about this being a beginner's guide, she goes over a manageable number of herbs, of maybe about 20 or so, and she talks about how to recognize them, how to grow them, and then how to use them. So this is a terrific book, and it's so popular, and I think there's been many printings, so you might be able to find that easily at a used bookstore, but I would think it'd definitely be at the library. Then the other book that I want to mention is The Herbal Kitchen. And this is by Cammie McBride. And she just seems like such a lovely lady. And the foreword is written by Rosemary Gladstar. And this, even though it says The Herbal Kitchen, she also discusses spices. And what I love about this book is she talks about how to make different spice mixes and to just actually keep them in little containers right on your table so that they're easy to add into your diet. And I've actually made a number of them. And one is great. It's got ginger, it's got cinnamon, and I think it's got some cardamom in it. And I keep it right over there on my kitchen table. And it's wonderful to sprinkle a little bit of that on your oatmeal. We eat oatmeal a lot in the morning. And this way I'm getting all of the wonderful properties, health properties, that are offered by different spices. And now the bonus superfoods. The reason I put these in the bonus category is they may or may not be easy to find. Some may need to be ordered depending on what your grocery store carries, but I wanted you to be aware of them. The first is beef liver capsules, and these are very high in vitamin A, which is wonderful for our eyes, and vitamin D, as we discussed before, has potential to protect us from cancer, among other things. And so this is a very good thing to have in your prepper pantry if you are not in the habit of eating liver. Now, I have a recipe for you on how to make what I call beef liver nuggets, and you dip them in fermented ketchup, which I also have a recipe for you, and they're quite delicious. They're deep fried, they're breaded and deep fried in either lard or beef tallow, and they're wonderful. But even if you can't stomach that, I understand some people just don't like liver. Keeping beef liver in a capsule form on hand is wonderful. Now, if you have a freeze dryer, I don't, but I have heard from other people that you can take fresh beef liver and you can freeze dry it, basically making, desiccated liver powder and grinding it up and putting it into a capsule. The capsules are often sold at like online vitamin stores and things like that. And you can make your own beef liver capsules. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, what about dehydrating liver? I have not tried dehydrating liver. I'm very hesitant about dehydrating animal foods unless you're making something like jerky. But for long-term storage, I'm not sure how possible it would be to get the beef liver dried enough and then ground up and put into a capsule. But if you have ever done that, please let us know in the comments below, because I would like to learn more. Now I'm just going to jump over to this side where I have really probably the ultimate superfood, cod liver oil. Now, I have the liquid here. I take the liquid. I just can handle it, but I know my family often prefers the capsules. Now, you may have seen the story where my son and I talk about his experiences growing up with traditional foods and how he would take the liquid. I would just shake it up in a little grapefruit juice, have him take it down, and then give him, as I call it, a grapefruit chaser afterwards, which we always really laughed about since we weren't a drinking family. But he would take a little bit of extra grapefruit juice so that he wouldn't have any fishy taste in his mouth. But this is such a good quality cod liver oil. It's really not very fishy, and cod liver oil shouldn't be really fishy. That's a good indication that it may not be fresh. It should actually have, this is open, it actually has a pretty mild aroma. So that's a good sign when you are looking at cod liver oils. And you also want to look for cod liver oils that are in their natural state. You don't want ones that have been deodorized or stripped of their vitamins and then vitamins put back in. You don't want them to be fortified. You just want the cold pressed, regular, plain old cod liver oil as it comes right out of the fish. And Rosita, I think if I'm pronouncing that correctly, it sounds, being Texas, it sounds like a Spanish word to me, but this is actually Norwegian, so I'm not sure exactly how this may be pronounced. But it is Rosita, and this is, I think, an excellent brand. Now, both of these are shelf stable. Once you open the liquid cod liver oil, I personally like to refrigerate it, unless you're going to go through it very quickly, but I find it just keeps its freshness longer. The nice thing about the capsules, if you just keep them in a cool, dry place, they're fine even after you open the container. Now, why do we want to be taking cod liver oil? Well, not unlike the beef liver, these are high in vitamins A and D. Again, A, great for the eyes, but vitamin A does so much more than that. And the nice thing is it's vitamin A in its actual form, vitamin A. Fruits and vegetables that have the orange or red color may be high in what we know is, and forgive my pronunciation, is beta-carotene, I believe is how it's pronounced. But your body has to convert that into vitamin A. Now, if you're young, it's probably very easy for your body to do it. But as we age, anything that involves something being converted into something else can take a little longer. So giving your body the exact vitamin or mineral that it needs in the form that it needs, then things like liver and cod liver oil are excellent. So as I said, high in vitamin A, high in vitamin D, and the nice thing about both liver and vitamin A and cod liver oil is that these are in the proper combinations in a whole food as we should be putting them into our body. We're not supplementing with vitamin A that's just a laboratory-made vitamin A. We're not supplementing with vitamin D that's just taken, and made in the laboratory. We're taking real whole foods that have the vitamin A and the vitamin D in their proper proportions, because you always need to be careful with these fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A is and vitamin D, that they could build up too much in your body, and you don't want that because that can lead to toxicity. And this is something that you can read a lot about on the Weston A. Price Foundation website, WAP.org. And that's the foundation that was created by Sally Fallon, the author of Nourishing Traditions, who talks a lot about the benefits of cod liver oil and why taking vitamin A and D in a natural form, in a food form, is so important. So that is definitely worth keeping in your prepper pantry. Finally, what I want to talk about are an herb called Tulsi. It's holy basil. And the other herb I want to talk about is moringa, also often referred to as the tree of life. Now, why do we want to take holy basil tea and moringa tea? Well, holy basil is known as the queen of herbs. Tulsi, or holy basil, is an aptogenic, I always have trouble with that word, aptogenic herb that has been used for more than 5,000 years. And it's found to aid in stress relief, it's found to lift your mood, it supports the immune system, and it supports the natural detoxification process that our body will naturally do on its own when supported with the proper herbs. And what this specifically means when they use the term aptogenic is that holy basil can adapt to what you need it to be in your body. So if you are having a particular problem with something, as they laid out in the various things they list that it will help with, that's exactly what it'll help with. So if you're very stressed and your nerves are on edge, the holy basil can adapt itself in your body to help you relieve that feeling of stress. And moringa, which is nicknamed the tree of life, is also very similar to holy basil in that it's an overall helpful herb in essence to give us many nutrients. In many parts of the world where people grow the moringa tree, they eat the leaves, they dry them, they make tea from them. They do a lot with the tree because it's so loaded with nutrients that are very helpful to our body. So between having the Tulsi, the holy basil, and or the moringa, you really cover yourself with two herbs that can fill so many properties in terms of helping you with stress and immune system building and detoxification. Now, I know when it comes to talking about herbs like this that are so extensive in the ways that they can help us, it can sound a little funny to folks, but there actually is a lot of scientific evidence, which I'll share over in that blog post, about the health benefits associated with holy basil and with moringa. Now, one more bonus that I want to share with you that I don't have out here, which is actually perishable, but it can also be made into a non-perishable form, are kefir or kefir grains, and specifically those for making milk kefir or kefir. You can buy the grains dehydrated, or you can dehydrate any grains that you may already have and are using. But the reason I like to mention kefir grains, and especially those that are dehydrated that you can keep in your prepper pantry, is because if you're in a situation where you have no access to whole milk that's fresh, and you have purchased powdered milk, whether it's whole milk or the non-fat milk, and that's all you have, but you know that that may have been dried at a high temperature, and it may have had probably much of its nutrition somewhat destroyed, you can reconstitute that milk, and then you can culture it with those kefir grains or kefir grains and make kefir. And kefir is very rich in probiotics. And again, we nourish our gut, we nourish our overall health. So bonus superfoods, beef liver capsules, cod liver oil, holy basil tea, moringa tea, and dehydrated kefir grains. Now, if you'd like to learn more about stocking your prepper pantry, as to why we need a prepper pantry in the first place, how to stock it with real food you can buy at the grocery store, and how to do it on just an additional $5 a week to your grocery store, and how to best store everything, be sure to click on this playlist. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.